I think to get started, if you could work for an organisation that already has a project management practice, they already have good practices in place that you can learn from, because it's very hard to just go somewhere that doesn't already have good project management and start trying to do project management because you've got nothing to learn from. So finding probably a bigger company that has established practices, that will give you a great introduction. And there's always the debate, which is best, experience or certification? Well, I think experience obviously is going to be of more tangible value, but if you don't have the experience, then get the certification. If you don't have the experience, then you don't have it. So get the cert, and that will always show your commitment to the field. It'll give you the grounding of the theory, the basics, and give you the perfect starting point for real world experience. So, get the cert. We've got the CompTIA Project Plus and the PMI's CAPM, both of which I would say they're similar sort of level, both of which are extremely achievable for anybody who has no experience in project management. So absolutely, just do it. Even if you don't necessarily want to be a career project manager, it's going to give you a solid grounding in good management, good business practices, good planning and understanding of the buzzwords around project management that could assist you in any career, whether you want to actually be a project manager or not. And both of those are very achievable within 3 months with obviously it depends how much study time you want to put aside, but I think that would be realistic from a starting point of 0. I think it can just give people a structure and an understanding of good ways of working together and working. It can be applied, I think, to in person or remotely. And I think a conversation I had earlier was around management styles, which happen to be a leadership or management, something like that, which lends itself to some project management methodologies. But an understanding of different styles can therefore evolve into how best to manage people if they're remote or in person. That's going to take a different type of management, different type of leadership, and that is really general stuff. That doesn't just have to be project management driven. So again, helpful regardless as to what your working environment actually ends up being. Yeah, I think for users it works well. It's a much easier way to be absorbing changes. In years gone by, when there was a new version of Office and perhaps organisations wouldn't upgrade every time, they'd perhaps skip a couple of versions and then have a big rollout of version or whatever. And that would be a big training rollout. It would be taking people off their job to actually attend a training course. There'd be a learning curve because the interface had changed or the way something key worked changed. It's a big taking people away from their job to actually get up to speed again before hopefully there is improved efficiencies, whereas now it's seamless, just new features all the time. Don't even need to skip a beat, you just sort of keep on working with small improvements, small efficiencies all the time. If your organisation is a Microsoft house, then Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams is just going to be your core tools to get your job done. You'll expect those tools to be pretty much invisible because they are a tool to get your job done. They are not your job, they're a tool to get your job done. And the joy of Microsoft 365 being a subscription product, you're getting small updates all the time. So there's not that sort of, oh no, we've got a new version of Office, we've got to relearn everything. That will never happen again. We're getting small updates all the time because it's just an ongoing improving tool that shouldn't slow you down when there's new features, because they're just little features every now and again that just make your life easier. And I think for everybody, having that foundation in place, getting to maybe use Teams a bit more, that's probably the newer member of the family. That's the one that maybe people aren't using all of the extra things it can offer. They just think of it as video calling and nothing else, or another aspect and nothing else. But that's the one possibly to dig deeper into, to see how it can add more value to just getting your job done better. I think Excel has got to be a favourite of many people because Excel can do so much, possibly too much. You see people using Excel for the most extraordinary purposes that perhaps they should be using other programs for instead, but it's got to be the most flexible and the most beloved program of them all, I reckon. No, I think probably more the other way around. I think people overuse Excel. They try and do, like they might be using Excel when they probably should be using SharePoint or they should be using Microsoft Project. Because Excel is so flexible, and that's its strength and its weakness. You can mold it into all sorts of things. Sometimes there might be a better specialist tool that's better suited to the thing you're trying to mold Excel into doing. But at the end of the day, Excel is that wonderful beast that can be coerced into all sorts of different roles. And that's the joy of using Excel, I think. not exactly misused or underused, maybe Microsoft Teams, as I said, and certainly through the COVID-19 pandemic, Teams suddenly usage exploded with people who were using it as their video tool. And back in those days, with Teams being included with a Microsoft 365 subscription, I mean, that's changed a bit in Europe now, but just being a tool that people already had paid for. So therefore, pandemic, right, we need video calling. Oh, that's what, okay, we'll plug Teams into that slot. And people only using Teams for that and not for all the other things Teams can do. So with Teams, because it integrates so well with your file sharing experiences, your co-authoring experiences, your calendar, your diary, it's a shame when you only use it for one part of what it can do, when you get more out of it when it's all joined up together. And I think SharePoint is the same. You might think, well, we just have SharePoint almost like as a static one, a company webpage, for internal or HR affairs. There's so much more to it, and it's a shame when people have got the technology, they've done the hard bit by implementing it and rolling it out and getting licenses. It's a shame when people don't just take it a step further to get a good collaboration experience, from that same tool. It's a balance between how hard do we have to try to get people to the point of using it when it's going to interrupt in them actually doing their job, to take them off the job to do training? Are we really going to get value from going that extra mile? I'm biased. I think they will get value from going that extra mile. And I see a trend these days, more and more organizations, just much like the subscription model, they just make the functionality available to users if they choose to discover it, if there chooses to be a particular team lead that says, hey, we could use SharePoint for this, and they take the lead on developing it for their team. Right. And that might bleed through to other parts of the organization that say, hey, we could do that too. So that's much more of an organic way of a technology becoming useful rather than somebody from IT saying, hey, we need to use SharePoint for this, let's roll out a training program, X, Y, Z. It tends to come from the ground up now, which, I think that works as an approach which fits in well with the subscription model of just drip feeding functionality. It works. These days, my suggestion would always be show people some kind of pilot group of people who are possibly team leaders or possibly just tech champions. Show them what's possible. Just some isolated scenarios as to what's possible in these different technologies that are available to them. Those individuals can have ideas as to how they can apply that to their particular job roles. And if you've got a good pilot group that, with a good representative of different team leads or tech champions, then their ideas that you hopefully spot in them with those what's possible type things, they can then hopefully take it and run with ideas of implementing it for their teams or for their types of the organization. Well, I think, so certainly in my training from the end user perspective, it's going to give people a structured way of understanding the possibilities rather than having to discover it. Because, when you discover things, you just discover what you happen to come across. You don't know what you don't know. And from the IT perspective, it does help if people have discovered things in a more organized way rather than just hanging on to a random feature that they think could solve all of their problems and ends up not. So my training will give a structure to that discovery experience, that's for sure. Those are the sorts of people that are ideally placed to say, look, I've been thinking, I've put together a spreadsheet or I started to use Teams, a particular app I've got in Teams that could do this, and they could just start using it with one or two co-workers just to get a feel for could this work, and then they've got a good use case to say, hey, I think our team could do task X, Y, and Z well with this particular feature set that I've, put together. People are people, but I just think and hope that the tools they use will become invisible. It should just be, as I said, just a tool to do your job. You're not an Excel expert, you are an expert at your job role. Excel is a tool you use to become that expert. So the tools, I would hope, just become invisible. I think so, but that's kind of the nice to have, isn't it? Because a lot of us, you take a job where you can, and it's not always useful to be that picky, but it can give you an interesting insight into how, as a woman, you might be received at that organisation if you can get a picture of who's in charge. I mean, that's a big question, obviously, and it is tiring and wearing when you are the only of anything. And to your question, being the only woman, it is wearing. There is that feeling that you have to overprove yourself in order to be credible. So, no, I don't have a good answer for that, other than empathy. That it is tough, and looking for companies that do have a good diversity program, that do have women on the board, that do actually have at C-suite level that are going to be supporting women. But yeah, it's a tough one. I wish I had a good and easy, a quick answer for you. In years gone by, when you might only put out half a dozen applications, then it would be quite easy, I think, to research each individual organisation. And if it was an in-person job, you could go and spy at the office, see people come and go, see what the dress code is. But of course, these days that's not practical. You're putting hundreds of applications out there. It's remote working, so you've no idea where they're based. Dress code is irrelevant. Very different landscape now to what it might have been some years ago. So I think that is a tough one. Maybe when you narrow it down to your, if you do have job offers, you get down to the next level in of your applications, that's when the deeper research is going to be more important.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from CBT Nuggets. Oh, and also, if you're new to IT or are interested in an IT career, visit cbtnuggets.com and sign up for a free trial.